When we last met, I think it was about a month ago, in our regular scheduled negotiation sessions, one of the things that was talked about was catastrophic capital and just regular capital clauses in the contract. And you were going to prepare draft language for us to look at. Do you have that available?
No.
Okay, it was going to be ready for we were supposed to be 2 weeks ago, and we didn't because it ended up being a village meeting. So it was supposed to be prepared then. I don't really want to start off the meeting by pushing back hard, but we're down to crunch time here, middle of July, and we need to meet our commitments to the town, to you, and you to us to keep things rolling. So when will that draft language be available to us?
Well, depending on how this evening goes, my plan was to sit down and have an appointment with our legal counsel so that we can have the legalese that we talked about at the last meeting. He has been unavailable until next week, so
he's been unavailable for 5 weeks.
To a certain extent, yes. He's been busy with other clients, and he hasn't had time to return some of our calls or email.
So I hope everybody understands the importance of this contract for the village and the town. I mean, it's critical, I think, to both communities, which I still hope we consider one community. But we've got relatively little time left to take care of things. So kind of need to put a date down, give a commitment when you can have that to me.
I'm making a phone call again with Mr. Riffle, and we will have a meeting next week. I'll give him the marked up, we sent the marked up copy that you gave us at just before the last meeting. And so that
yes,
you can see what you're asking for.
That was the marked up one. You brought here's someone. You have language that you took out of another department's contract just as an example of catastrophic capital.
Yeah, you wanted something different.
Well, no, that was just what you showed me was an example of another department. What I asked for, and the village agreed to, was draft language that the village of Palmyra would want. If your lawyer wants to go word for word from that, that's fine. But we just need an official submission of draft language so that we can review it and take a look to see if we're okay with the language, have our attorney look at it. So I wouldn't call having an example of another fire district's language on that being your draft language. And if you want it to be, if your lawyer says it, that's fine. It's just that's not how it was discussed.
Well, the way it was presented was, it's typically there might be little tweaks and words depending on different contracts, depending on things, but it's basically the same thing all across the board.
Every single word in the contract makes a difference. So it is
fine.
The draft language.
I can give you
what day do you have a meeting scheduled with him?
Can you commit to our next meeting on the 10th, right? On the 24th, we're scheduled for our next meeting.
as far as
That's 2 weeks. If you're meeting with them next week, have it a week later, have it for me on our next meeting.
try. I mean, as far as it was just asking, it's like I said before, it all depends on what's. Take little notes as far as what other extra little things to talk to him about. That would be one of them.
At this point, at the middle of July, we can't keep kicking the can down the road. So
yeah,
please,
well, we didn't get this until the end of May for you. So
and we've already gone through it, and we've already, in our meetings, we've already gone through it. And one of the reasons we haven't is because the village said they didn't really want to do anything until after the referendum.
that was
So, but we have that, we've gone through that already. We've agreed to it.
Mr. Martin, in January when we had the joint meeting, I said at that time, because this got dumped in my lap, because Kathy didn't want to deal with it. That's my viewpoint. I said in January we could start talking wording in January. Yes, I did.
The tone is changing now.
And the thing is, you know, I've been waiting on when you.
Are we done going through that already? Have we gone through it, and have we pretty much 90% agreed on the language?
Dates, yes.
Okay, so why are we're deflecting back to something, we've already gone through it, whether we went through it in January, went through it a month ago, we've gone through it, and we're 90% sure on what the language is gonna be. Okay,
But we didn't get this until that meeting.
we're through it, we're 90% agreement on the language, what does it matter when you got it? I think it's deflecting away from the fact that we didn't get what we said we would get 2 weeks ago, and it's still not. So you've committed now to have it for me for our next meeting, I'm accepting it. That's fine. We'll go from there.
So we're gonna go through this again to refresh everybody's memories.
I don't think we need to do that.
Okay. Then what else do we need to talk about this evening?
We have a number of questions on the numbers and things like that, and some of the numbers we've seen and things like that. So that's the only question that I had, because I believe the only draft language we're waiting on, the only thing that, when I originally sent this to you, we gave you what we would like added to it or changed. And we've gone through that and pretty much agreed whether it was included or not included, answered the questions that we had that I brought. The only thing from the last meeting that the village wanted to see added was a couple of clauses related to capital. Basic capital and catastrophic capital, so that's what we're talking about. As far as I know, that's the only other language that was potentially going to be added. Not saying something can't still change in one party or the other, ask for something else. But at this point, that's where we believe it stands.
Well, for clarification, one of the things that we asked was as far as there's co-ownership of a few vehicles. And during the course of time, the village has paid for all maintenance on vehicles. It's one thing that we wanted to add to the agreement. I know it's been shared with the rest of the town board, but we felt it would be fair that if there is something that comes up that is, you know, there's budgeted maintenance, which would be in the operational cost, because I don't understand the budget. You can tell me if I'm wrong. And then it's unscheduled. And I'll give an example like we did the last one was we had what was like a water pump go on something. Or something that you said you said that one more, you know, it's been a month ago, it's like a $7,000 repair on a vehicle that is, and we felt that in the future that we get a bill like that, well, town should pay for half, we should pay for half unless the vehicle is fully charged. You know, but that's, you know, just so that everybody knows what we're talking about as far as that was
Totally
concerned.
agree, absolutely.
And as far as the catastrophic, I mean, I thought that, you know, the wording was good enough, it just matter was going to the lawyer and saying, is this good enough, yes or no? But if they want, if he wants to tweak it, then, you know, that's fine. I thought.
Lawyers
that
generally. Lawyers generally want to treat it.
As we're looking over it,
No, and that's, you're exactly right, and that's basically what I said, which is that hasn't happened yet from the village's side, so.
and then the only other thing was, which maybe we talked about as far as the question was the, all the percentages we're going to work out in regards to, because right now it's call volume and equalized value, and you're thinking about tweaking
I
that.
thought we already agreed to add population, we just have to pick the numbers. As far as the formula, I thought we had already agreed that we would go to a three-pronged formula.
I thought you were going to talk to your board to see what they would agree with, and,
Well, I knew that going in, that
well,
our board, that's what we want.
so. Well, okay, then that's something that I can.
You know, we just have to pick the, one, we have to get the numbers, I think we have the equalized, the formula right now is equalized value and,
Call line.
call volume, thank you. And we pretty much know for 2024 what the call volume was. And the equalized value, we have those figures. So with potentially minor tweaks, we know what those numbers are. The third one we want added is population, added to that as well. So, and I'm not going to say all, but the most of the other districts that I've talked to have population as part of their formula as well. So in fairness to everybody, that's just a third part of the formula we would like to add. At least at our last couple of meetings, the village didn't have an issue, not putting words in your mouth, but it's what I heard, didn't have an issue adding that. It's just what population numbers are we going to use, and we just have to come up with that. So. I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Josh.
Can I ask you a quick question, just so that we're on the same page, where you guys get your population numbers from, is there certain?
I think we just have to agree whether to use the census or this. You guys shared a document population last time, and we just haven't really gotten together to talk specifically about, do we use 1719, do we use 1698, or whatever the other number was. We just have to. I mean, those numbers are within 20 or 30.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on the same.
Yeah. And that'll be something where it's not just us picking, we'll just we'll decide that together, which way.
It just has to come from an official,
Yeah. Whether it's the county, or I don't even know where documents, the Wisconsin Blue Book.
Department of Administration,
We'll figure
every
it out.
October.
Yeah, we'll get that one.
and that's something that can be worked into wording. Same thing with the equalized value. That comes what, August, September-ish? Thanks to the Department of Revenue, so. Because I mean, the numbers that were given for the examples were 2024, that's what we have right now. So,
And right, it will be updated. They'll update them those data, be sure to install it.
and as long as the wording is in here saying it's that breakdown and then that can get plugged in at a future time, and just like we kind of agreed at the last time is, you know, the plan is to have a 2-year contract, so when it comes to 2020 or 2027, we will use 2026 equalized value, and whatever, you know, we'll update that as.
Right, you will have to find a mechanism to update the population as well, especially if the development
Well, that's,
out here has any additional population or not.
and that's a to-be thing, is what I can know.
It's a future thing that we don't know the timing of yet, but it impacts. And the one thing that we still have to get together and discuss is the vehicles, the 4 vehicles that we have our ownership on, how we want to handle those. And we will be talking about that, and I'll have that information for you by the next time.
Okay. Did you have a list of?
Yeah, you gave us copies of the title. Do we, and I'll be honest, I don't recall, you guys, the village was gonna look into this or what? Do we know what the book value on these are?
We do have an estimate, but I don't have one.
Okay, that's fine. Just have that for the next meeting.
So own vehicles and where we're getting the population from are the 2 big things that you guys are still looking at, right?
Well, the book value of the vehicles, Mike said he has that information.
No, but I'm saying, you guys are gonna discuss what you want to do.
Yeah, what we want to
Okay, so I'm making notes that that's what you guys are looking at.
Sure, absolutely. Anything else on the text, language in the contract before Josh jumps in?
Dreams will have fun with this. We will, so. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Anybody else want water? Not water, right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
There was a purpose for that.
Hey, Josh.
So I was at your meeting on the 26th and talked some of the contract related things. At that point, we had discussed, or you guys had discussed at the meeting, the calculation of the formula, if you want to call it that, for call volume, utilized value population. And I went back through that in that meeting tonight and just wanted to point out that there is a difference between what had been itemized for the percentage breakup for calls for service. And I don't know, because I didn't put the numbers together as far as which part we needed to address. It said that there were 151 calls for service in the village and 82 in the town, which totals 233, not 249.
There were mutual aid calls in there that I didn't ding you guys for, basically. So, because whether you were contracting with the village or not, we would have gone to mutual aid calls. So,
Okay.
they were total calls, but, and that counted basically against us, not you, because we would have gone to them anyway. That's why the number is, the 249 is higher, because the mutual aid calls in there that.
So essentially 16 mutual.
Yes. I did this like 6 weeks ago, but that's my recollection, yes.
So when we get down, I mean, this is kind of points to keep considering and debating about, but when we get down to that, mutual aid is mutual aid is mutual aid, whether it's a town call, village call, whoever, however you guys break that out. My point is that with 151 out of the 233 and 82 out of the 233, the percentages change about 5% on that 1/3 of how we develop those things out. So whether there needs to be a description of what falls county, what falls village, or whatever, then so be it, but.
Like I said, it needs to be a discussion between you guys and the village as to are we gonna count all calls, or are we only gonna count, who's getting involved in the mutual aid? I mean, some of them is we are receiving mutual aid, but a lot of them we're also providing. And that may be, we're gonna end up giving mutual aid to other communities, whether or not you're contracting.
Correct. That was kind of what I was anticipating you were gonna say, is that.
That's just my thought, that's not these guys.
I would agree with that. So using 233 would be a more representative approach to distribution of calls to the communities, because they're specifically responding here or there or whatever.
Question, the village gets reimbursed for mutual aid calls, right? No?
We responded on the open, for a minute, they're gonna respond back to us if
But-
we need it. So we don't charge them, they
The
don't.
hope is when we receive mutual aid from, it all, at the end of the day, it'll all wash out.
Yeah.
Yeah, just reciprocal. I mean, it's happened a lot more now, correct, Mike, as far as there's been
Yep.
our mutual aid
Yep.
back and forth.
We're on more people's cards because we have full-time staff. So we're getting
Well,
requested for mutual aid more than.
Our neighbors have less and less staff available, so everybody needs help, so that's why we're going and that's why they're coming.
So I ended up with, for the calls for service, I ended up with 64.8% in the village and 35.2% in rounded. That worked out.
I'm sorry, what was the number?
35.2. Again, using a total of 233 and then splitting the 151 and 82 out based off of that. Equalized value, you know, as you guys said, it's kind of a changing target depending on the time of year and the contracts and all that. Getting down, you had 3 different calculations in expressing out of that sheet. And if we do use call volume, value, and population, I will, again, I didn't try to recreate one way or the other, but 51.97%. And the town at 48.43.
Good population or no?
With population. So I weighted each one of those three pieces at 33.333% of the overall to round out to 100% share for call volume versus equalized value versus population. So if that's something that, I mean, we need to talk about that more, I just wanted to at least initially bring it up. I don't want to call it a discrepancy, but at least approach it.
So it's 51.97 and 48 point what?
43.
It's a spreadsheet, so I can change that, plug it in, and it should all come out that you, the numbers in your state too, so. I just don't have it electronically right now.
Oh, that's it.
And that's something you just share with the rest of us when you plug it back in.
So then again, taking some of the conversation from your meeting on the 26th, one of the explanations, my concern at your budget meeting a month or so ago was regarding the overall cost of service. Let me back up a little bit. As far as the timeline of this, we have a public hearing scheduled second week in November for our budget with the town. Obviously, ahead of that, we have to notice it. And way more so, we have to prepare a budget for 26 that goes along with whatever that number ends up being. So, if we're working closer towards an actual formula, awesome, that helps. But, again, we're gonna start our budget meetings in August. And we need to be able to figure out whatever that difference between 25's cost of service and 26, 27, whatever, is gonna look like, so that we know how to approach it. Mentioned it at the combined public safety and budget meeting, that for 2025, we were in a very similar situation that the village was in this spring. Rather than having a referendum on a ballot, we have a referendum by voice vote of attendees for a special election meeting. So it's kind of like a caucus but different. People that show up, that listen to the presentation, they vote on whether or not the budget and or levy is something that we're going to support. For 2025, and we attempted in 2024, but for 2025, we had to request the residents to increase our tax levy by $147,000. So any additional increase that we see proposed or agreed to one way or the other require an MS cost, we're at the wall that you guys were at as well for the village budget, right? We didn't have fund balance to be able to balance our budget because it had been done in 2023. Our fund balance went away. We balanced 23's budget, which is why we asked in 24, and why we asked again for 25, and actually got the approval to do that. So this is not only a timeline thing, fundamentals of putting a budget together, but also admittedly, the PR portion of being able to explain to people in the town of Palmyra what the request is, what it's for, how much it is, and what it means to them. In a manner that they can understand and either decide whether to support or not support that. If they don't support it, there is a chance that we have to borrow money to be able to provide service one way or the other, pick a department, pick a function, to town people in 2026. So that's kind of where we're at and why it's a little bit of a already lit match on our end of it, is because we've only got 2.5 months really before we have to have a budget put together to be able to then start explaining to people what it means. Half the timeline of what you guys had for your referendum in spring, and it obviously matters a lot what you can explain to people. They may not like it, they may not agree with it, they may agree with it, they may like it one way or the other, but we have to be able to do diligence people that 26th, one of the discussions again was what that cost of service actually is gonna be or proposed to be. And a mechanism to figure that out on the fly was to take the budget, divide it by 12, or divide by 6, multiply it by 12, divide it in half, and call that a starting point for what we're gonna see. If we generally agree with the formula and how that's gonna break out, I just used the formula, which was 48.43%. That means that potentially, if you take the 2025 budget, and the town share would assumedly be 48%, we're looking at a cost of potentially $358,000, which is 100 and call it 24,000 more than what we are currently paying for that service this year. So, I take that back, 180. So,
Not including any potential capital clauses.
correct. Correct. So that's a big number for us because it's roughly a 10% increase in the budget overall. Like everything we do is a little over $1 million. So 118,000 is a pretty big chunk to increase on top of what we got and what we asked for last year. I don't know, I understand there's some current, upcoming, however you want to look at it, staffing changes. I know that that is going to have an effect overall operationally inside the village, how that all plays out. But at some point, we need to figure out what, from you guys, what that actually is. I have concerns because, and I'm gonna call them financial, not from a, should you do it, should you not, right? Strictly from a monetary standpoint. Potentially staffing a third and fourth person in the station and what that additional cost, let's say 2027 looks like, or even 2026. The capital related things for your building, I understand that building isn't gonna be constructed in 2026 or even in 2027, but that service plays another big part of it, but we're on the hook for 48% of it. I don't know what your future holds, and I'm not gonna get involved in the internal workings of the department and all of that kind of stuff, but all of those things are financial concerns, not only for 2026, but 27, 28, 29. And realistically, there hasn't been a whole lot of, I'll say, clairvoyant decision-making, at least since it was brought up a month ago or so at the combined budget and public safety meeting as far as what the village is actually intending on doing. Because with a cut in half number of 2025, even if you multiply that by 10%, or insurance costs, electric, power, fuel, all of the stuff that nobody has any control over, I don't want to get to a point where we get knee deep, neck deep in this whole thing, and you guys decide to stay up 4 full-time people. I mean, that's a huge change in what that cost looks like, if there's an assumption that the percentage and everything else then plays out. So there's a lot of stuff that is up in the air, and I understand there's a lot of stuff up in the air. Internally, forward thinking, all that type of stuff. But all of those decisions, again, like I said before, weigh heavily on your 48% partner in this thing. Because there eventually will be a tipping point where it's flat out order. Not that it's not good service, not that people that work there aren't awesome, but there's been a 35% increase in your guys' budget in the last 2 years. I know that you changed your staffing model, and or even said it at the meeting on the 26th that it's much more expensive to do it the way that it is now than the way that it was before. We don't have any input in what your staffing looks like or the internal workings of the department, but I hope that you realize, understand, or at least somewhat sympathize with the fact that all of those decisions are financially based for sure, but there's a silent partner that doesn't really have any input into those aside from emailing the trust to the president and those sorts of things. I understand that avenue is there, but I'd love to hear that you're looking for a 3-year outlook for the department. To me, that helps set some of the uncertainties aside. If you can see out year 2, year 3, potentially change year 3 during year 1, because you know that's kind of where it's headed, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm not comfortable with just from a financial standpoint because we don't know. And I understand that you don't know, probably more now than you did 2 weeks ago that you don't know, but there's a huge amount of leverage in the decisions that are made for that department. And we're usually not on the side with the hand on the water as far as what the leverage is. We're on the other side of how that all plays out. So
We'll be having our budget meetings here probably from August, start scheduling them with the department heads, so that we'll get hopefully a clearer picture of where it's gonna look. So,
Does
but
the,
we'll see.
well, I didn't interrupt.
No, that's it.
Question for this is just a generic question, because everybody has their view on what's needed and what's not. Does the board looking budget change in your mind with the recent resignation of the public safety director? There may have been things that he was pushing for that may no longer be pushed for, or have you not had time to wrap your arms around that?
We have not had a chance to look at that yet.
Sure.
I don't know if somebody wants to do that.
I would just hope that, I mean, we did, the police and fire commission met last night and they did, appoint an interim, public safety director. So my hope is, and I talked to Mike after, the meeting, him and I and the new director can see where.
Is he sure that was this or not yet?
It hasn't been accepted yet, so it would be premature to share that.
Sure.
But the goal is to see where, if we wanna continue with stuff that Scott and Mike started, or if we wanna keep things, that's just, it's in progress.
Fair enough.
We have to meet with, this person on Monday to formally, they appointed, we have to do the monetary stuff.
And we'll try to do that as quickly as possible.
I mean, we can drill into a lot of stuff in prior budgets that I don't want to say that I'm not happy with it, it's not my budget, but that, there's a significant amount of money that was spent in recruiting public safety directors years ago, that was spent on a consultant. There's a handful of other legal related things that either are recently put to bed or currently ongoing, without driving into your budget because you don't have one. I understand that when we met on the 26th that Scott was going to have a budget, obviously at this point. That's probably not going to happen because
We were presented with a budget on Monday, and we were supposed to be, and that did not happen, so.
It would not have been appropriate for someone going out the door to present the budget.
Yes. We did not feel comfortable presenting it, so we're leaving it to the next person, so.
and like, I understand that's fine, and if you guys have an interim in place or potentially a place that definitely helps without having that 3 month. I mean, when I heard the news, I was saying, holy crap,